Hello everyone, welcome to the Hand Spinner Review Spot YouTube channel. You can click on the description below to go to our Facebook page for all sorts of written reviews, features, photography, anything hand spinner related really. Today we're here to look at a hand spinner which has made quite an impression on the market as a whole. This is the Crusader by Kasfly. This is a high-end Chinese spinner. Everything here is produced in China by Kasfly, as you can see, but it's really not a member of the sort of cheap Chinese spinner brigade at all. This is something slightly different. So before we get into the review and talk a little bit more about this packaging and all the rest of the things that surround this spinner, let's do a quick size comparison. So there, as I say, is your Crusader. There we have a stubby, a Turnian from NTO Designs, a Trillium from One Drop, and we'll put a tri-compass in there as well. And no, that's not for sale. Sorry, I have to say, because people always ask. There will be more of them coming, I think, so there's no need for you to worry too much. Okay, so there's your size comparison. As you can see, this is quite an appropriately sized spinner. It's not a million miles away from a torque bar in terms of length and overall design. And speaking of design, that is probably the key feature of the Crusader from Kasfly. Has a very bold aesthetic. It's got almost a sort of Knights Templar kind of thing going on. You have lots of nice chamfering and different terraces here, these lovely little sort of faux rivets that run around the shield motif. You have a cross in the center of that, which is all 3D machined, and then two sloping angles that move away from the center. So it's really quite complicated, and on top of that you have these little cutouts as the arms move away. It's really quite refined work. You can tell that the machines involved in making this are pretty high end, and it's pretty special. On top of all of this detail, you also have this, I think it's probably a tiger logo in the center here that's been engraved into the surface or machined into the surface, and that's really perfectly done as well. I mean, that's pretty exceptional work. On top of that, you've got some interesting design features here. As I say, this is a Chinese spinner, and it implements some of the things we've seen on cheaper metal Chinese spinners as well. That is to say that it has inside here a bearing cage that holds I think it's a 688 hybrid ceramic bearing. Let's show you that. Take these off. Everything's beautifully machined. As you can see as well, these buttons are dished, and they sit around the cage, which means that this also has really superior abilities in terms of not allowing lint and dust into the bearing. If you're someone who gets really sick of cleaning your spinners out, this is probably quite a good choice. This is the titanium version. There is a bronze version available as well, which I think it almost seems like a more appropriate material to me for the design to have it in bronze. But regardless, here you can see the bearing cage, which brings us quite neatly on to the packaging. Now, I don't normally bother featuring packaging. It's normally a tin or a box or something perfectly nice but relatively straightforward. They've gone slightly crazy with the Kasfly Crusader packaging, and here it is. It's a little tin with a threaded top. I haven't bothered reseating it because it makes quite a loud noise when you take it apart, and the cats and dogs don't like it. Inside here you have kind of a velvet covered foam interior that houses the spinner in the center there like that. And in the top here, you have a little piece of, I'm sure it's copper, with all the details. It serves effectively as a little certificate of authenticity for your particular spinner. But then on top of that, you'll also notice these two small nubs, and they are for getting inside the bearing cage. You simply locate them and then twist. Once you've done a few twists of it, it's easy enough just to remove the bearing cage. You can see part of it there, and push the bearing out. As I say, this is a 688 bearing. It actually has some markings on one side there. Whoops, get it in camera for you. There we go. Gives you an idea of what you're looking at. It's a really nice bearing. I haven't actually seen one with this many balls in it, I don't think. But it works really, really well, and it's quite a nice size, and this particular caging method for retention, where all of the pressure that's exerted on the bearing is vertical rather than horizontal in something like a glue or a press fit, I really, really like it, and it's nice to see it implemented in a high-end piece, because this certainly is not a cheap spinner. And these are generally sold by a gentleman called Dean Chu in America. He seems to be the number one guy for getting hold of these. So if you are interested in these, head over either to the Crusader Facebook group or drop him a message on Facebook. And he's a great guy. He will sort you out very quickly. He replies fast. He's really on top of his game. So that gives you an idea of how everything works. As you can see, this is a really pretty substantial piece of kit, and I can't help feeling that this is contributing a relatively sizable amount to the cost of this piece. That's fine if you really like this and you think it's worth the additional costs that are definitely going to be implemented by this really considerable lump of aluminium here that again is really nicely machined, and obviously you've seen the interior is really good as well. That's great, go for it. But personally, I might have preferred to see a slightly more stripped down packaging just for the cost saving that would have brought about. But anyway, let's get to the actual spinner itself. This is a really nice spinner to use. It's very fast, being titanium. This is the light version, with it being the titanium one instead of the bronze. I haven't handled the bronze, so I can't comment on what that one's like. This one's very fast, very easy to use. Because you have a slight negative taper to the end of it, it's quite ergonomic from the point of view of being quite nice to fidget with. The downsides, talking of the ergonomics, are really, there's a fair few hotspots on this. As nicely chamfered and handled as all that is, and the quality of finishing on this with its very fine media blast is really high. I mean, this is a really quality piece of work. But somehow, while I don't find these little rivets particularly uncomfortable, particularly for reverse flicks, if you catch them across your knuckles or something like that, you will find that this will generate a little bit of discomfort, and depending on how calloused your hands are or whatever else, you may or may not find that particularly uncomfortable. Personally, it doesn't drive me particularly mad. I don't have a huge problem with these pieces, but at the same time, for the sake of the design, I understand why they're there, but I'm not sure that they lend enough to offset that slight ergonomic issue. The only thing on here that really I don't like, though, is how sharp the edges of the crosses are. I mean, if you like this aesthetic, that's great, but I can't help feeling that just a little bit more attention to detail to those particular points would be nice, because they are quite grabby. And sure, I mean, you're not going to contact them too much when you're using it, so it is something of a nitpick, but it just feels like with such a nicely produced piece with such great finishing, that's a little bit of an oversight. Aside from that, though, it's not a terribly long spinner, this particular one. I've had over 3 minutes out of it, but that's sort of being quite careful and making sure it's a vertical spin. I'm not sure how well broken in this one is, so I can't say an awful lot. This one has come to me from Dean, but via Alana at Fidget Haven Reviews. If you haven't checked out her stuff, definitely do, because she's doing some really excellent work. And thank you very much to her for aiding in sending this one over. But it spins well, it feels very smooth. It's got, obviously any bar spinner will have a certain amount of wobble and bearing lash as you move it around. It's not a question of the particular piece, it's just down to the nature of the weight distribution of an item like this while it's spinning at relatively high RPMs. It just feels a little bit more wobbly maybe than some. It rattles a bit more because of the fact that it's titanium. I'm sure that all of these things would probably be less apparent in the bronze version, and that would probably be what I would go for if I was purchasing a Crusader for my own collection, just because of the fact that I think the aesthetic is served better by being in bronze. But overall, it's very nice to use. It's a nice size, it's quite ergonomic, with the exception of the hotspots. It's a nice spinner in every way, really. And if the aesthetics, I have to say, the design aesthetic as a whole isn't really to my taste, but if you really like the look of these, and I know that lots and lots of people love this kind of Knights Templar, you know, sort of knight-like kind of look, then I think that it's a really nice choice, and I certainly wouldn't dissuade anyone who was looking at the Kasfly Crusader and thinking, yeah, that's a beautiful spinner, that's really the one for me. And there is a try version of this available as well, which I'm hoping to be able to review for you here on the channel very soon, and that will be in bronze, I think, when I eventually get my hands on one of those. And so there are a few options available to you here, and it's a premium spinner, it's a high-end spinner, it's a high-end spinner from China, which was another thing which will put certain people off. But if that isn't really a big issue to you, and it certainly wouldn't be a big issue to me, I've got no problem with paying for very high quality work wherever it comes from around the world, then yeah, I can see this being quite a nice centerpiece for quite a lot of people in their collections, and perhaps that's a nod for the packaging as well from that point of view. So there you go, that is the Kasfly Crusader. It's a really nice piece of work, very nicely finished, and while it might not be something that I will want to keep in my collection, I can imagine it being a really important piece for quite a lot of other people. Thank you very much, guys. See you at the next review. Bye bye.